All right, I think we can get started. So first of all, thank you everyone for attending today. We have a really great session planned for you, from loan to loyalty, data-driven strategies for engaging every member for your credit union. Just before we get into things, in this webinar, you'll learn lots of different things. Hopefully, some of the things that will hit are what it's like to grow share of wallet with data-driven member engagement. How do you use data and machine learning to optimize marketing spend and lower cost of acquisition? How to spot early conversion or attrition signals, building automated data-driven onboarding and reboarding campaigns, acquiring members, and more. And we've got some really amazing folks here to share some of their experiences using data and AI to do all of these things. We have a great number of resources for all of you here, including white papers that explain where are some of the best and most powerful publicly available data that your credit union can use, ROI calculators for indirect member engagement, and lots of other cool stuff. I won't stay on this slide for very long, but do know that that's here. We'll go over some of these as we go through the presentation today. But these are all one QR code snap away and totally free for you guys. My name is Tomer Borenstein. I am the CTO and co-founder here at BlastPoint. BlastPoint is the member intelligence platform for credit unions. We serve over 23% of the United States. And with me here today are, and this is not hyperbole, some of the three brightest minds in credit union marketing today. Again, this is not some like cool intro. I truly believe that. And so we've got, first of all, Josh Wilson, Senior Vice President of Marketing at Whitefish Credit Union. Josh, can you tell us a little bit about Whitefish and yourself?
Yeah, so Josh was at Whitefish Credit Union. We are in Montana, so we have most of the state. I've been doing this about 8 years, but in the industry for close near 20. So I run the marketing, branding, public relations side of the credit union and been involved in the industry for quite some time.
Great. Thank you, Josh. And we also have Royce Ngiam, who is the Senior Vice President and the Chief Marketing Officer at First City Credit Union. Royce has some incredible background with experiential marketing and working at Disney. Royce, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Trevor. First off, thanks for having me here. So one of my guilty little pleasures, I think some of you know, is watching Naked and Afraid and having this group with you, Tomer, with Josh, and with Steven. So the one thing about Naked and Afraid that I love is they have the hardcore people that go out there and do crazy stuff for 40 days in the woods. Well, there's also like a fan edition where they make it easy. So like they find a park in LA and put some cameras on. So for this particular group, consider me the fan in the park, and you guys are the hardcore survivalists. It's just a pleasure to be here. So excited to get going.
Thank you, Royce. And last but not least, we have Stephen Reed, who is the SVP of Marketing and Brand Development at P1FCU. Stephen, thanks so much for joining. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about P1FCU?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. So far at P1FCU, I've been in my role for about 5 years. I come from an agency background, so I have kind of a diverse marketing background. We're located based out of Lewiston, Idaho, so we're in the Northwest, and our Field of memberships a good chunk of Idaho, some of Oregon, and all of Washington. So yeah, just happy to be here. Thank you, Tommy.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. And so I think before we get into all the nitty-gritty details with all the numbers and the data, I do want to start with maybe just setting the stage a little bit with some of these insights that came from actually Eltropi's Credit Union Leadership Summit that I was at in Jackson Hole in Wyoming a few weeks ago. Great conference with about 80 or so credit unions, CEOs, lots of really interesting statistics, insights, research, discussions. Some of the things that really stood out to me, and something that a lot of the discussions revolved around, are some of these stats. So first of all, the fact that less than 20% of Americans under 40 use a credit union. The fact, and this was actually new to me, but the fact that the historic satisfaction advantage over banks has flipped. When we're talking about the thing that separates credit unions from other traditional FIs and has been you know, our differentiator, our value prop seems to have gone away according to research from Filene. Also interesting research from Filene was that 83% of credit union websites are indistinguishable from banks. And it was also around the same week or so where that MIT research paper came out that 95% of AI projects fail to meet their goals. Really interesting paper, maybe a little hyperbolic, but certainly something that was discussed a lot during this. So I'm curious, from your guys' perspective, do any of these keep you up at night? Josh, I know that you had, for example, a pretty interesting perspective on the 83% of CU websites, but looking at this, it's the opposite of rosy glasses. So what do you think about these stats? Any of these stand out as especially concerning, or maybe not as concerning as you might have thought?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. I think probably what you're seeing here is that there's normalization of the credit unions, right? We're seeing kind of parity between these small credit unions, the one branch places, to larger banks where you get that customized service. And then as there's more consolidation in the industry, as branches grow and credit unions grow, they're starting to see that kind of balance, right? The 83% of credit unions being indistinguishable from banks is not necessarily right a bad thing, because historically credit unions have been looked as like laggards within the space. We don't have the right service, we don't have the right tools, those types of online conveniences that bigger banks have had the capital in order to deploy. But as credit unions are being more competitive and deploying resources, that's still going to be okay. I think where the challenge is we have to make those investments within the website infrastructure, combining with the marketing tech stack to leverage where the internet and resources are going to meet expectations. And what I'm looking at in terms of us updating our website, because we're currently in that process now, is how does somebody experience online overall, and not just with banks and credit unions, but just surfing the internet. You look at Google, what does that answer up top before their search results? How is all of that programming your everyday member to expect what's happening on the website? People want to know that they're being heard and seen. And I think that's where we need to be competitive and maintain that competitive spirit along with the banks.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I would have jumped in there because I was laughing when you started off there, Josh, about the not a bad thing. Because what I heard was credit union websites weren't very good. And now that if 83% are indistinguishable from the banks, it's actually we caught up to the industry. Yeah. And I think there's a little bit of truth there. Ironically, we're in the same boat. We're completely redoing our website. So for anybody that goes to it, I apologize. But it will look better very, very soon. But when we went to go study it, there was the whole conversation about, do you go more life cycle? Do you get a little bit more ethereal and building out the different formats? But when we did the research, I mean, Google, the #1 site in the world, is basically a search bar. And then when we looked at the top banks in the world, I think it's the one out in Spain, but they have the national lottery, so maybe there's a lesson in there. But I think at the end of the day, removing that friction, getting the members to engage with the accounts the way they want to engage with, I think there's a lot of truth when you think about, like you were saying, with the user journey. But so I was laughing when you said that we kind of caught up because we were behind. And I think, again, there's a lot of truth to that. And the question is, how do we keep from continuing to lag and move towards that innovation space? There's so many shops out there, big, small, that are doing some amazing things. Love hearing that.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. That said, though, what about the part about the historic satisfaction advantage being flipped? And I think the reason why those two things might be related is the fact that you still have to differentiate from a typical bank.
Well, I think honestly, that's self-inflicted. We hid behind our differentiator was member service, and we care about the member. And the assumption being that bank service was terrible. Well, the reality is it's not. Sometimes there are processes that fail, but we all have processes that fail as well. The banks are scoring. This is empirical data. This is not a sentiment here, but they're doing a good job. The data is showing that they're exceeding what credit unions are doing on the satisfaction levels. But I think also Josh touched on it. That's why I'm a big fan of Josh. If you guys haven't figured it out, is that it's not just the interaction. Now the digital becomes a part of it. If anybody that plays with NPS or member surveys, you know that your branches are getting brutalized when the ATM is not working, or if online banking goes down and your call center suffers, your NPS scores. So it's that overall relationship, and tied into your top stat there, Tomer, or Filene's there, or Eltrapes. Sorry, I should look at these slides a little closer. Yeah, they don't come in to the branches. They interact on their phone, and that's why we always talk about, if our membership app online looks like a DMV form that we converted, if that's the experience, the reality is they want to sign up for credit union membership just like they sign up for TikTok. And if it doesn't look like a TikTok experience to become a member or apply for a loan, you're gonna miss them. And that's why the fintech world that you guys, Ultra P, the stuff that's happening out there is just fascinating. And it's just amazing.
Yeah, I was also, sorry, go ahead, Royce.
Oh, wow, sorry. I was just gonna just adjust that last bullet because I touched on all three. So I think my only surprise is 95%. I would think it was higher. I don't think there's a single AI company making any money at this point. So nobody knows what their goals are. If making money is one of them, well, nobody's figured that out.
And that was the one that really stood out to me just as an AI nerd. Everyone's been talking about this 95% MIT paper. I think, we can argue about methodology and things like that. But what I did hear from a lot of the C-suites at the Leadership Summit was that it's really hard to know where to implement AI technology in the first place and whether it's working or not. That was a big part of some of the themes that were discussed. Lots of really great examples from different credit unions that are starting to adopt AI and machine learning into their processes. To me, listening to all of these different discussions at L3P, really all of the discussions came down to these crucial four questions. The first one is, how do we win the right members? And if you go back to this slide, is how do we de-age our member base? How do we increase this number from under 20 to hopefully way higher? Another question was, how do we stop the churn of our most profitable members? I think on average, the stat is that only 30% of members, on average, are actually profitable. So when we're talking about attrition, it's not all created equal. I believe that. Royce, you're going like this. So how do we make sure that
for bankers it's 20, and that's optimistic.
Yeah, you could definitely say that. The other thing is using our existing relationships and our existing members. How do we grow share of wallet? And beyond just direct engagement with the members to win them, to grow their relationship, to prevent them from attriting, how do we boost efficiency and reduce cost to serve? And we all, just for the attendees in the room, we all met a few days ago just to talk about how do we make all of the insights that we want to bring to the table today something that is repeatable, something that you guys can take home and repeat at your credit union, and really came up with this framework. Stephen, I think you're the one who came up with the at first it said erase, and we were like, that doesn't sound super good. So Stephen was like, how about this? Stephen, do you mind just walking us through this a little bit, and maybe talk also about where has P1FCU focused most of its time over the last 12 months?
Yeah, so we've really been focused on increasing our checking account. That's been our priority. So we really have members that come through indirect channels. So we wanted to retain those members. So that's kind of like, we have the retain. How do we then engage them? So we've been using the data that we've been receiving from BlastPoint for those members that have a high propensity for a checking account for us, and really been target marketing after them. So we've acquired them, and then once we have them acquired as a checking account member, we've deepened that wallet share with them. We're then able to cross communicate to them with or cross sell other products to them. So we're able to cultivate and start developing that relationship with them. And once we have, specifically a checking account is a really sticky product for members to have. So once you develop that relationship with them, then you can continue to cultivate and, increase that wallet share across the board. So that's kind of where this approach comes from.
Yeah, I love that, because I think as a credit union leadership team thinks about how do we bring in this new technology? What does AI even really mean? Where do we apply it? I can't think of an AI technology that wouldn't fit into one of these buckets. So we've got retaining. How do we prevent members from leaving? How do we keep our relationships? You've got engaging, which is really about getting your members engaged, signed up for the right programs, and engaged with the right products. You've got acquire, which is how do we acquire the right members? How do we de-age our member base, et cetera? And those are kind of the primary ones, but at the same time, you've got that cultivation piece. How do we support our members through different life events? What if they're in a particular situation where they're having financial trouble? How can we leverage data and AI to prevent that from happening, or at least being there to offer the assistance that we can? And then finally, harness. I think here we're really just talking about how do we make our processes more efficient? How do we optimize our marketing budget? How do we just do more with what we have and really harness the power of our member relationships and our data? I'm curious, Josh, Royce, where would you focus most of your time if you had to pick one or two of these over the next 12 months?
Yeah, I'll kind of say there's something else in the previous slide you had put there about the right member, and you talked about life cycles. And I think as we're looking at if you're leading a marketing department, if you're developing content, and especially this time of the year, like right now, which is why I got all these notes over here, it's like I'm planning my 2026 calendar and where to put all the dollars. It's an honest conversation with your senior team, coming from your board, setting the strategic direction on who are you trying to target under what life stages. We fall in this trap in our industry of trying to be everything to everybody. And unfortunately, that helps dilute where that message goes and how we're pinpointing it. Inevitably, we do probably have all the products to reach a majority of those customers. But if you look at the pricing of your institution, if you look at how you're deriving income, and what is the actual like number one product and the number two product, and then really what that acquisition funnel is, you start to see there's certain lifestyle segments that are going to rise to the top. And that's probably where you need to focus most of your dollars at, right? So when I look at efficiency, even though we have a great marketing budget, we're in an area where it's very cheap to advertise. As we want to acquire more of it, we're trying to say, how can we strategically put those dollars to have the best possible impact and to broaden that out there? It goes back to like a McDonald's versus In-N-Out, if anybody's on the West Coast, right? In-N-Out does a few things very, very well. You might have some other stuff on the menu, but you're getting burgers, great fries, you're getting milkshakes, right? McDonald's, there's lots of them, lots of menu options, but maybe the quality isn't there. There's a reason why those lines are out long for In-N-Out versus McDonald's. So I'm trying to take that approach and say, how can we spend a little bit more money to engage, but also to acquire those right members, but the ones who actually fit our products the best, and then exploiting that from the top of the sales funnel, hey, they have to be aware of us, all the way down to the consideration, and then finding that conversion stage and making sure my advertising is hitting all of those different buckets along the way.
Yeah, and we'll actually talk about an example of you doing just that, when we review some of the playbook in action. Couldn't agree more. Royce, what about you? Where's First City looking at? And I know that you guys are really kind of revving up the engine to go hard on digital transformation and member intelligence. We'll talk about some of the things you guys have cooking a little bit. But when you guys look at a framework like this at a high level, what comes to mind? What are some of the things that you're focusing on?
So honestly, what comes to mind is this harness, because I'm getting like Matrix human battery vibes. So I think I need to unpack that a little bit here. But honestly, for me, for us, it's acquire. I learned a long time ago, there's only one number that matters, depending on your type of business or line of business. Everything else is great. It's nice to know. You can slice and dice. And Ronald Hogue, one of my favorite quotes, if you torture the data long enough, it'll confess to anything. So you can get wherever you want in terms of allocations and all that good stuff. But honestly, 99% of my time is spent on acquisition. That's what keeps me up at night. That's what keeps the focus. That is the lens. And regardless if we're a mature business or we're growing, if you're not growing membership, then your credit union is not going to grow. That's just the lifeblood, and everything is built around acquisition. Some of the other stuff, if it happens, like, cross-sell, product penetration, engagement, retain, cultivate, all of that's important, but that's sort of a consequence after you acquire it. Or said a little differently, you have to be able to do all of it. It's like if pick your favorite sport, you can't just be good at one thing. You've got to be able to do all of it. But where do you spend all of your training? And that's in acquisition.
Yeah. What I love about this framework is that there is a really data-driven way to figure out which one of these circles you should be focusing on first. The nice thing is that it's actually all available for every credit union, yours, all of your competitors, and your entire industry in the NCOA call reports. I'm just putting this up here. This is a QR code that will take you to our NCOA-driven tea leaves analysis. This is just an analysis that we use at BlastPoint internally to figure out where can we help our customers the most, but it's also a great way to just see how you compare to your peers, your performance, what's going well, what's going less well, and what does applying AI to address, whether it's acquisition, whether it's retention, whether it's engagement, whether it's just profitability and efficiency. This report will be completely personalized to you and help you assess what that looks like, and maybe even help you take some data to your leadership team and say, hey, this is what we're seeing out there. This is some of the things that we can do to address that. And the cool thing about this is that I think we're going to talk about a data-driven process that you can apply to each one of these areas. And the process itself is the same as long as you have the right data foundation. And then we'll talk about some of the examples specifically with Josh, Stephen, and then Royce about how this kind of approach, what does it look like in real life? What are some of the pitfalls? What are the learnings? But before we dive into all of this, I do think it's really important to just talk about terms a little bit, because AI has become a buzzword and it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So let's just get on the same page with some terminology. So the big umbrella for everything is analytics. Anything we do with data, collecting it, visualizing it, dashboarding it, it's an umbrella term. Anything in Excel, Power BI, that's analytics. Under analytics, you've got AI, artificial intelligence. Unfortunately for us AI nerds, AI doesn't mean anything anymore. And so when people say AI, you should ask them, what type of AI are you talking about? The next layer down is machine learning. Machine learning is most of AI algorithms kind of baseline. There are some AI algorithms that are technically not machine learning, but in any case, machine learning are simply algorithms that become better at performing certain tasks the more data that they are exposed to. So things like propensity modeling, load forecasting, churn prediction. We'll talk about machine learning a lot today. A lot of the success stories that we'll discuss are all about this. Under machine learning, you've got deep learning, which is a new class of not so new. It's been around since the 70s, but it's really become powerful in the late 2010s. These are neural networks. All of the chat GPTs, et cetera, are types of deep learning. It's probably not a good idea to use deep learning models to make decisions for marketing and credit unions just because they're black boxes, and we'll talk about auditability and how important explainability of certain models are. Deep learning models are hard to explain. Under deep learning, you've got generative AI, which is ChatGPT and Claude and DeepSeek and Midjourney and all the things that are in the news right now. Under that, you've got artificial general intelligence, what all the Silicon Valley companies are trying to achieve right now. We're in Pittsburgh, don't hate us, we're not them. And then we've got artificial superintelligence. So far, only Meta has said that they're doing a superintelligence thing, but this is basically Terminator. We won't talk about this today, but those are some of the different ways that we can talk about what AI actually is. And everything that we'll talk about today is actually going to live in these three bands for analytics, machine learning, and some generative AI as well. Do you guys find that this is something that you have to educate folks internally about, or is this something that, as marketers, you needed to get education about? it seems like, we have a lot of conversations at Blast Point with lots of different credit unions, and everyone's talking about AI. I don't know that everyone has this kind of detailed view of what AI means and what kind of AI they need. Any thoughts about this?
First time I saw you and Josh presenting at one of the America's Credit Union GINA conferences at the time, and you threw this up there. I mean, I was fascinated because it's not been broken down. And I mean, when you put it together in this kind of a chart, it seems very simple. And once you explain it, you bring it down. But the intricacies behind the levels and what they do and how they solve. You recently did a presentation for us, and hey, you just said it here, you don't want deep learning models for your segmentation because you're going to potentially get in trouble with regulators. So, things like that we don't think about. So I love the way you show it and the way you explain it. I think it really impacts a lot and creates other conversations, because you're right. Sometimes we don't really want AI, we just want machine learning, and that's effective. But we don't know that. We just throw in the general term of AI. So I love it. I love it.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll kind of follow up on it too. I think so. I also teach at West Virginia University in their graduate program, and I try to tell my students a lot that you need to set yourself up when you lead marketing departments, even as a managerial level marketing department, like one of those mid levels that you're trying to get to the next stage, right? You can't take for granted that the person you're talking to as a stakeholder, to a board member, or even to your CEO or senior leader, that they have the same understanding about this industry that you do. So we have a lot of generalized terms, and people make those kind of heuristic methods, like the mental shortcuts. Oh, this means that, when reality is we as marketers, communication professionals, are the experts with that. So we have to take time whenever we put out these terms, say, okay, when we say AI, or we're saying market segmentation based AI data and facts, this is what this means. Because, and I'll give you an example for our website build. We want to incorporate AI in next iteration of our website. But I'm not talking about a large language model that's going to make decisions for the institution that we're going to be liable for. That's kind of where a lot of people go to. Hey, I think ChatGPT, I think AI. What we're talking about is, can we provide, like, say, a content library combined with a marketing tech stack that has AI that's powered by a segmentation strategy. So that way, when Royce goes to the site, the site is laid out in a way that says, okay, the predictive analytics that are based on AI can rearrange the website and provide the content that is going to be most relevant for Royce, which is going to be different than Steven, this is going to be different than Tomer, right? So that, to me, is a great use of AI to say we want to have the segmentation strategy that's dependent on the individual model. Think like a Netflix experience is very different for every person, or the Amazon homepage is very different for every person. That's the type of AI that we want to use as marketers. But if you go and say, hey, I want to create this, or I'm going to use AI, you have to build that explanation into it and break it down in a way that people can understand it. So as a marketers, I'd say you guys want to be the experts of this and understanding how it's built, so that way you can explain it in a way that everybody can understand.
Yeah, we're in the process too of just starting Gen AI for our chatbot, and we're going to move over into our FDR as well. So having like that idea concept of what actually Gen AI is compared to just AI in general, or the deep learning, it is an opportunity to be able to educate the stakeholders that are involved in your C-suite, and just let them have a better understanding of like what the difference actually is and how it's going to impact whatever product we implement. It's really important to make sure they're on board and have a good understanding of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. I call this the AI nesting doll. Cool. So I do want to talk a little bit about the Blast Point process here. This is really not meant to be a sales pitch, but I think just so that we can understand what we're about to talk about with Josh, Steven, and Royce, just so that we can sort of understand what goes into kind of the ingredients here. So the first thing that we do with credit union is clean and consolidate all of their internal data. That means their core data, their marketing systems, their CRM, et cetera. That's really important to have a really clear idea of your first-party data that you have about your members, whether it's through a data warehouse or through some other mechanism. making sure that you have your data and you know what data you have and that it's in a decent enough shape is the first step of the process. There is also a ton of incredible data available out there that, that would fall into third-party data. Publicly available sources, proprietary sources for sale, but data enrichment is the second part, because first-party data will tell you how your members are engaging with you, but they won't necessarily tell you what the rest of their lives are looking like, and especially as credit unions that want to be there for our members at the right time in their life, that's why that external data is so important. We then, using all this data, build these machine learning models, propensity score segmentation models, and then we have our platform that allows folks like Josh and Steven to leverage these tools. So, and Blast Point infomercial, but the cool thing about that Reach playbook and that framework is that there is a 1, 2, 3, 4 step here that any credit union can do. You included some cool screenshots from our platform, but you don't need our platform to do this. And whether it's for retaining, for acquisition, for figuring out how to lower our marketing spend, the first step is always target. Who do we need to target, and how do we use AI or data to figure out what are the right segments or cohorts that we need to be focusing on? So for retention, it means who are my most at-risk members, or for checking account adoption is who is most likely to open a checking account and what do they look like? And once we are able to define that target, we can then really dive into the rest of the data that we have about them to understand what are some of the channels or messages that would resonate with this particular target. Oftentimes, you actually break that target further into segments. Just because you have two people who are fit for the same product, for example, doesn't necessarily mean that that they care about it the same way or that they're going to interact with the same channels. But once we know the target, we know the right message in the channel, we have to activate and hopefully automate some of that engagement. And the most important part is actually measuring the impact of the communication, the campaigns, and iterating over time. I think, Josh, one of the things I loved about sort of working with you for one of our presentations for American Credit Unions was that we figured out how important it is to make sure that when credit unions bring this kind of process in, they realize that it is iterative in nature, not just to set your expectations, but also to set your leadership's expectations. Any thoughts about this process, what it's like to, you've started implementing this, at Whitefish. What was some of the hardest parts about this? What was some of the most impactful parts? And same to the rest of you, but Josh, maybe we start with you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think there's a couple of things on here. Say, what's the actual takeaway for a lot of these metrics, these propensity models, is that there's numeric values as well. So we get an idea between a range of saying, 0 is probably the least likely possible, the 10 is the highest likely possible, and there's a distribution along that curve, right? So the whole point of that distribution is that you need a test. And I think that's where the iterative nature of this comes into. Marketers, by their nature, have to be curious people. They have to be able to look at something and say, if I do this and tweak it, how will that affect results? If I put this campaign out here or this channel out here, how will this impact it, right? The testing nature of it means that there's going to be some things that are going to fail. Everything can't succeed all the time. But if you test it and then you can provide a numeric value back to say, okay, here's how that distribution curve went. We had these scores for these people, and then now we got this data back and we can match it and say, what's worked, what didn't? And then is there a correlation? Is there a connection that says, yes, we see that the people that are a 10 were this much more likely to respond than somebody who is a 5. But what if there's a distribution that's across the board, right? Something different. That's where you need to get back to data analysts and say, what went right? What went wrong? Where are some of the common trends? And how can we adjust that model to fit our area? One of the challenges that I've seen within our space is that we are all buying the same data propensity models from the same groups that are selling it to every single one of our competitors. So the same, hey, I'm interested in a car loan or a mortgage, that's being sold to the bank down the street. That's being sold to the bank that's 3 states over. And like what we learned in Montana is that how people respond to different types of like advertising is very different here in this state than it is in California and New York. And you say, like, of course it is, right? But the models themselves don't reflect on it, which is why for us, we're trying to get very, very smart with the data. Yes, it's more expensive, but I can allow myself to be more efficient if I have better data that's customized for our area.
Absolutely. You know, just hearing you say that reminded me, I was last week, I was at Seattle, I was in Seattle last week at WSECU with Circle. They put on a great event, and a lot of the discussions were around how do we innovate more quickly as a credit union. And a few things came out of that discussion. One of them was basically the adoption of the scientific process and the idea of having experiments and testing and that quick iteration, because a lot of what we realized as we were kind of discussing, you know, what's preventing us from innovating further and or faster was just part of it was fear of failure. And so when failure is just part of the process, which it is in the scientific process, you kind of get that for free. The other thing was isolating your experiments, if they're completely new experiments, from the right members. That was also an interesting kind of piece of insight there.
So I'll turn it over to you, and I'll get Stephen and Royce a chance to respond. But so like a lot of national brands, and these are like consumer packaged goods brands and those things, they will look at individual test markets that are specific DMAs or kind of designated marketing areas. Cleveland, Ohio is statistically representative of the rest of the nation, right? So if you look at different types of demographic, psychographic segments on here, there are about 3 different cities in the country. Cleveland comes to mind as the first one, where say if I advertise my product here, like I want to do a brand new energy drink, they will find that one particular market, test it there, see how it responds before they go national, because it gets very expensive. But you have to, by nature, test and then test in a way that allows you to extrapolate those results over a broader spectrum.
That's fascinating. Huh. Stephen, what about you? What do you think most credit unions struggle with the most in this process? Because again, if you've got this process down, you can apply it to retaining, engaging. So what do you think out of these different steps has been historically the most difficult for the industry?
I really think like trying to find the right channel to reach people on has been one of the more difficult tasks. And it's a unique one to us specifically because we have a really large footprint. So we have branches. You can drive, I don't know, 8 hours each way. You find a branch, right? Except towards Montana. Gosh. But our DMAs are very different. So we are able to take our member base in different areas and go in and see what preferred channels are used in that area. Like what's working with our member base in those areas. And being able to do that in different segmentations over our entire footprint, it's pretty helpful for us. So I think that's one benefit that really, if you have a varied, like we have urban areas, we have very rural areas. If you have that situation, then you're able to really see what's going to reach your members in those areas or potential members.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Royce, before we move on, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think from where I've seen most credit unions they falter in the target and measure. I think they can work through the two, but understanding where to start. I mean, it was one of your original pieces, had a conversation with a friend earlier this week, like who is our target market or who is our ideal member? And then how do you do it from a data-driven standpoint? Or when we think about going after product, I mean, this is the biggest fallacy, and I think it's been the same since I joined this industry 25 odd years ago, because we all need auto loans. So what do? We go look at our portfolio for lookalikes, and we go after them for auto loans. And that makes a lot of sense. And our CLOs all want us to do that, except your lookalike modeling just gave you your underwriting criteria, because that's who you booked. That's not who wanted a loan. That's who you want to give a loan to. That's a huge distinction there. And so if we don't understand the target, or if we're not set up, like you said earlier, again with the Entropy data, or I forget, I should probably stop trying to quote it, whatever. But if those under 40 aren't, if they're not coming to using credit union product, if they're not engaging with our services, but we're still built on legacy underwriting, legacy processes. I know some of us have moved over to like the Zest AIs, but then we do Zest AIs and then we go double check the models, and it's like, well, all right, so we just increased our cost or slowed down any advantages we might have got. So getting to that right target, understanding who they are. And then after that is like, how do you measure it? Because a lot of times we say you can't measure it. I don't know, maybe they came in off the billboard, or maybe we can't measure radio advertising. So well, when you get between the two of that, I think we're actually pretty good in the two middle things because we get a lot of stuff. We could get a lot of stuff pushed out. We could do a lot of things. We just don't know that we're actually doing anything effectively a lot of times.
Yeah, no, some really great perspectives. And, I think different credit unions probably have different strengths, but, I think three is probably the least difficult because marketing teams have been doing that for a long time. So awesome. Cool. Well, we're about to get into, what does using this playbook in real life actually look like? This playbook and running it at your credit union can essentially enable you to do data-driven acquisition with ideal member profiles and first best product insights or next best product models for onboarding and reboarding. And I wanted to spend today talking to Josh, Stephen, and Royce about what that looks like in their credit unions. But before we do that, I did just want to highlight this. Again, something that we really, really want out of today is for you to have valuable things to take back home and leverage. So every credit union can leverage the publicly available data that is available for free based on our tax-paying dollars, at least for now. And we put together this white paper that will essentially walk you through all the different sources of free, publicly available external data, where to get them, how to find them, and what to do with them. So with that, we'll get into our playbooks in action section, starting with a case study with Josh at Whitefish, targeting new members and reducing marketing costs. Then we'll talk about increasing checking accounts with Stephen, and we'll wrap up with Royce, who's got a ton of really great experiential marketing experience, no pun intended, with from working at Disney and how he's bringing this to First City. So we'll get started with the Whitefish case study. So Josh, maybe before we start, you can give us the high-level 20,000-foot before picture and what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, I would say, the kind of current engagement now we have with BlastPoint, what we're leveraging for data, is for a de novo market. So we're going to be moving into new space. It's probably about an hour and a half, 2 hours away from our nearest branch location. And while we have some advertising within that space that we've had for a couple of years, so there's some relative brand awareness, we know that we're going to a more highly competitive, targeted area with services, that we offer that would be very competitive, but we still have to break through in the different ways for that acquisition funnel. So for us, once again, it's that high-level brand awareness, and we have lots of different campaigns, NFL games, your college football, out of home. They're going to help drive those awareness aspects that kind of hit for everybody. But as we go further down on that, it doesn't necessarily help us on the efficiency standpoint to advertise every product to every member. There are pre-approvals and pre-qualifications that we have bought from, credit bureaus. But while that data is helpful, it doesn't necessarily answer one of the most challenging questions for marketers is, we have this much money to spend, usually it's kind of a fixed cost, but there's some variables in there. How do I best get this message into that person that's going to make that decision? And that's where I found it that this type of data, when we have all of these different data sources like what BlastPoint provides, allows us to have kind of specific channel recommendations, daytime television versus evening, direct mail versus email, social media or not, and then also getting the ability to append that information to our marketing automation platform to allow for those one-to-one channels. So while we have that for our own individual members, we can also leverage those same tools on a prospecting data side to help with those targets. So for our side, that's how the acquisition and the new membership is coming for us and also reducing it, right? Is that expensive? It is. We are going to spend more money probably than just kind of shotgunning it out. But what I'm really looking for is efficiency. So it's more expensive per member that we're going to acquire, but we're being more efficient with those spends and overall spending less total dollars than if we were to say advertise with every door direct mails or email blasts or a very, very large, display advertising campaign. We want to be able to get the right data and then having the platforms like with Meta Business Suite, some of the podcast advertising to allow for those one-to-one matches and then matching that right audio or visual or written creative that goes along with those people. So for us, we've gotten very large ad sizes. The results that Tomer is showing on screen now come with, say, a very large pre-approval. We're able to distill that down once we got that list to say who's most likely to convert, and then seeing that rate, that conversion rate, really go above 0.5% or maybe 1%, which is always that really good standard to, multiple times. Now, am I happy with 3.8% with a 2? Yeah, for the time, but bottom line is I can see that number increasing the more that we get smarter and better and working with data partners to help us get more efficient with our spend.
Yeah, absolutely. And, maybe just to add some color to what exactly we did here to make this, magic numbers happen is that we used a few models and a few data points. Number one, and this was all for prospects, right? So number one, what is the likelihood that they would be a good member for Whitefish in the first place? So that's number one. Number two is, are they going to be a good fit? I think this was a credit card campaign for the credit card offering specifically, or whatever it is that we want to offer to these new members. We can also go the other way around and say, what's the best product for that particular member? And then the last piece, which is kind of what Stephen was getting at earlier about channels, is who's actually likely to engage with, this was a direct mail campaign channel. And so we were able to continue to use data and machine learning insights to whittle that list down. And despite reducing the list by such a huge amount, the actual results and the conversions went up. This is one out of many great stories that Josh can tell you about data-driven marketing. He's literally got an Emmy behind him on his wall.
That's because I like to do crazy creative stuff too. That's the fun part.
Yes, cool. Josh, anything else we want to say about this before we move on to the next case study?
Sure. I mean, the biggest picture, what drives what I do is the right message to the right person at the right time. That's the heart of data marketing. And if we can get that, then satisfaction increases. Because I think the biggest thing on Tomer's piece is like that satisfaction score is going down, is people think, oh, they don't know who I am. And the expectation so much from the other fintechs, because it's so data-driven, they have such poor resources into that experience, is that whenever they're being communicated with, it's showing that there's value. They understand the needs of those individuals. The more that we broadcast and shotgun messages out where it's not having data-driven, the more likely they are to tune it out later on, and also so dissatisfaction because my financial institution doesn't know me and doesn't know what I want. There's enough data out there to answer those questions. We just have to make that investment and show the value in doing it.
Cool. All right, next, let's talk, Stephen, about this particular case study where we really were looking at, first of all, increasing checking accounts. And I know that part of this was also just about converting indirect members. Can you maybe just set the stage here for what we were trying to do and how we went about doing it?
Sure. So in 2022, 23, somewhere in that area, like most folks, we accumulated a lot of indirect members at very low auto loan rates. So our goal was, what do we do with all these members? We have these loans on our books that after the Fed started raising rates back up, really weren't producing for us. So how do we increase that, wallet share? How do we get these members to actually have the products that we want them to have that will be beneficial to the credit union? Because right then, like everyone else, we were looking for deposits. And the cheapest way that we can get deposits is through checking accounts, just hands down, not borrowing from the Fed, not doing CDs. Like that's where we could find our deposits. And that was our strategy going into it. So we launched BlastPoint in January of 24. Since then, we really took time, and like Josh said, it's the right message in front of the right person at the right time. But it allowed us to also make sure that we weren't having message fatigue with those groups. So we're able to take that messaging and have a solid strategy behind it. And since we've implemented that and we've really focused on just converting those indirect members over, we've really seen an increase of 3.5% in our checking account penetration, which, over 125,000 members, that's a good chunk of checking accounts. And I think right now from launch, we're over 15,000 checking accounts and an increase of $65 million in deposits. And what that's also allowed us to do is, since we've been able to take those large amount of indirect members and convert them over to the products that we want, it's freed up marketing budget to, go focus in other areas, and allows us to like really stretch that marketing dollar further. So right now, like for a checking account, our acquisition costs over the last 2 years is roughly $75, which is really good. Like that's in the industry standard, that's really good.
Yeah, I think that's 80% lower than the industry standard, I think, around that.
Yeah, so that's what it's allowed us to do though. So we're able to use the predictive modeling to take those members that we already have and, high propensity members, focus on messaging to them, make sure it's not over messaging. And then we're able to take our other marketing dollars and focus those in other areas and to go after different markets.
Love it. Cool. Royce, let's talk about your entire framework for AI and predictive analytics at First City. I think it goes beyond just machine learning. So the floor is yours.
Thanks, Trevor. First off, just Steve and Josh, I read your case studies are fantastic. The results that you can take it all the way through and come up to those levels. I applaud you. I'm more of an accuracy by volume kind of a guy. So my perspective, I think, is going to be a slightly different here, because I do like the playbook. I think it's system agnostic, so that blast point makes it easier to activate along that framework. I think is a huge win. So we've kind of talked about AI at different levels, obviously, but I just wanted to start off here with what my real feelings of AI is, and that's the top left card image there. So hopefully everybody knows HAL 9000. You already made the Terminator Skynet reference. 1983, Matthew Broderick, Shall We Play a Game with War Games. And then for a little bit more obscure, at least for the video game nerds there, that's Cortana from the Halo series, who is, yes, an AI that does go crazy and try to destroy the universe. And then so even Asimov in 40s with Foundation, before Fly Out Robot, his anthology series, talked about, AIs as being dangerous and there's rules for it. And so I 100% believe that. So then why am I on an AI-driven call? Well, because right below it, I don't know if you can zoom in, AI learned flattery. I asked it an innocuous question like, oh, tell me I need a different word for inclusive community. So it gives me one. And the highlighted thing says, according to your own strategic document. I'm like, holy crap, this thing's learned flattery. Okay, you win, I give up. All right. And so for me, AI is not a thing, and it's a continuum. It's just another tool. That would be like saying my cell phone, my mouse, or my computer is a thing, and it's not. It's just another part of this tool set until I become on these human batteries for the Matrix type AI. But when I think about it, the one thing I do want to focus on is that you can never ask the technology to do something that I can't do. So, for example, you're going to see a couple of samples, whether I do it or my team does it. The point is we can do it. We can take video, we can create images, we can create data sets, we can do all of the work. So AI isn't replacing anything that I can't already do or my team can't already do, but technology is augmentation, not skill expansion. So if the technology can do it better or faster, then it's ludicrous of me to want to do it. And so all the segmentation stuff that Steven and Josh does, the blast point box can do it a lot faster and smarter. And by the way, in the time it takes me to create one model, you can create 50 models. Why wouldn't we do that? And that really is thinking about it as augmentation, not skill expansion. And so this is an example of it. This, I want a commission, so everybody asked Homer for one of these things, but I think he spun this up for me when he was bored. And really, it's using agentic AI to, I'm sorry, funny story real quick. I happened to go into a meeting with our CEO, and he's like, are you guys up on this agentic AI stuff? Are we doing anything with it? I go, well, as a matter of fact, I have a report built on agentic AI. Remind me to show it to you. And I kind of blew it out next thing. Instead, I'm laughing because Tomer just spun this up. But this is the brand reputation dashboard. So before I'd go to a handful of different tools, I actually pay for monitoring, or I'd go out to my different platforms. And he spun this up, and then he can run it, I think, real time, and it grabs stuff. And there's things out there like my press coverage or social media, app ratings. Some of it still needs to be worked on. You know, I don't have a 1 3/4 auto loan, or else I'd have one of those. But just an idea of what agentic AI can do. And if you jump to the next one, again, here's, it shows like the customer your SKUs, you got composite sentiment scores of what it can go out there and grab and find. So this is, again, all of this work can be done by people, but how long would it take you to spin this up versus letting the agentic AI do it? And for those that don't know, Tomer didn't code anything. He just had the AI code stuff to code other stuff. And you know, you used to joke about being ChatGPT. Tomer, I'm like, how do I know you're not AI? You're gonna do like bells and whistles like R2, but since you're giving me the references.
I'm not really here, Royce. I'm a deep fake.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, you know, but this is the way we're using it in our business today. And so First City, and I know I've kind of not said anything there, but I was saving it for this. So First City's been around for 90 years. And for 90 years, we've been a sleepy credit union. But at the end of the day, once we figured out and distilled down through, you know, in 30 seconds or 5 seconds, all the front work that was supposed to happen with segmentation and data and who is it and who is it, we serve LA County employees. And when we think about LA County employees, that is sheriffs, that is going to be social workers. It's not always who we thought it was, because First Aid had got through different iterations, whether it was community, whether it was referrals. But once we use the data, so how do we activate on it? And this is how we activate on it. So if we can just play this real quick, Tomer.
Wonderful. I'm going to play this. I do think we're going to run a few minutes over. So just a PSA that we will be sending a recording of this to everyone. But here we go. I'll click play.
Welcome to First City Credit Union. Angelenos serving Angelenos since 1937. Founded by LA County Sheriff's deputies, we've always been here for those who serve our county. As your not-for-profit credit union, we put your needs first, with better rates, lower fees, and personalized service built around you. Join today and take advantage of our 7-month certificate offer for a limited time only.
So that kind of skipped a little bit, and a couple of pieces there where AI is just part of our workflow. All of that voiceover, this is actually the second iteration of a commercial. So all of that voiceover was AI generated. There was some motion in there with on the donut being like the replaceable piece of a commercial when you use a stock footage for the certificate offer. So this just went live this week. So all of that was AI generated. And then if you go to the next slide, you're going to see, and it might be machine learning looking at your previous nesting doll model, but all of it, we don't buy anything. It's not like going out there and buying a Facebook ad or a Google ad. The AI, the algorithms, the models are learning it. So what we have to define up front is, as we create, Josh talked about the creative, when we build the creative, who's the message, who's the audience, what language appeals to them, and then using what's out there, how do you identify who is in that market? And for us, it's LA County Public Sector, it's government employees. I just told you we're a county seg-based credit union. And when you look at the click-through rates at the very bottom of the screen here, or impressions and click-through rates, you can see that we are indexing very, very well in our target market. And so AI then, the rest of the data you can kind of comb through. We did over 1 million impressions, something like 5,500 click-throughs to our website. And then we can drive it back down into the loan applications, new members, all that good stuff. But the idea being, AI wasn't just a thing. It wasn't some part of the process. What I was hoping to show here is that it was throughout the entire process. Tools were used. And even today, tools are continuing to be used to refine. We're not going out there buying it. And every day they come back and say, you know, the value of using AI for programmatic buys is it's contextual. So we don't know who's in the market for what at any single point in time, but the AIs can figure it out, and then they can serve up the message in the appropriate channels. And so when we come back to like experiential marketing, I did work for Disney for a while there, but I'm gonna share a recent example because I like cruises. My son actually works for Disney now, and he's on the cruise line side. And he invited us. So for all of you empty nesters out there, there's hope. The children can invite you one day, and you don't have to always write that check. But he's taken us on Destiny. Destiny is the newest ship in the Disney Cruise Line fleet. She sails on November 20th, I think is her maiden voyage. We get to go on there on November 13th. And so I'm sitting there sending my son, like, hey, did you know she just got launched from the shipyards in Germany? She's undergoing sea trials. And then I'll email him a few weeks later and go, how did the sea trials go? And he's like, Dad, we don't get that. We don't talk about that kind of stuff, or we don't do that stuff. And I'm like, well, did you know that she has these bars and this is her theme? Like, yes, Dad. And so the point being is we're buying a cruise with the experience. The product is a cruise. The experience has started months in advance, right? And for any of you that have been to the Walt Disney parks, it's the same thing. You get your Magic Band, you book your Fast Passes now, or Genies, or whatever they call it. And the experience actually starts way before you actually consume that product. And that's where the data started. And that's what we're showing with the videos. So even before they buy First City at the SEG, they see us at New Hire Orientation, they get the messaging. We're all through the portals. And so marketing mix today, it's less about being able to activate on one thing or to drive one thing, and it's more about being a little conductor where you're doing everything is data driven. You don't see segmentation driven here. You don't see personas, which I think is a farce. But what you really see is a bunch of data sources that drive and shape. And now the role of the marketing, whatever, manager, director, conductor is to get that right channel mix, get that marketing mix out right to the audience. And if we go to the next slide, it's really evolved because we would have next best product, or we think about cross sales, but that's all wrong. And this is what was exciting to me about partnering with Tomer and Blast Point, is to bring this type of a model to life. Because really it's all about that next best conversation, not the next best product. Next best conversation might be join First City. It might be, hey, get off of those paper statements. These are things that we're not thinking about necessarily because we're focused on driving product, or we're driving, like loans or checking accounts. But really, how do you get your audience to a place where they can start engaging with you? And that's what's exciting about next best conversation and the modeling. And so you've got a little funny photo over there. So for another day, since we're running low on time, but the name of our model is Pythia. And so that's the oracle there. And so the last thing I will leave you with here is this last piece of content that I brought. And so this is the world premiere of this. And this is AI generated video. So the reason I wanted to end on that is because that wasn't planned. And none of our data journeys, Pythia, animating a hawk, none of that was planned. What it was going out there playing. If you ask me what AI did I use, I'm not going to tell you, because the reality is it doesn't matter. The reality is go out there and pick one and play with it. And you don't know what you could end up with. You might end up animating this. You might be building models. You might be doing something, agentic AI brand studies. Guys, as smart as I try to pretend that I am or am not, I couldn't imagine any of that stuff 6 months ago. We didn't go into anything planning it. We went into it playing. It's banging rocks together. We're going to light a fire. And that's what you saw here today. Disney's got it distilled down to a science. For me, we're just banging rocks together. We're hoping to catch an AI firestorm, which is probably a bad example because we're in altitude. Again, that's another story for a different day. So
I love that, and it's when I started generating AI videos for the first time, it's definitely one of those moments where you get a little bit of AI vertigo. This was a great discussion, so we won't have time for Q&A. Although, if you do have questions for Josh, Royce, Stephen, or myself, please feel free to email us at Blastpoint. I will also just come back here to the beginning just to make sure that everyone has access to this QR code. This QR code will take you to all the resources that we shared today, including the case studies, including the essential guide to external data, including the AI assessment opportunity reports. So please feel free to sign up. I did want to thank again, Josh, Stephen, Royce, thank you so much for taking the time to just speak with us about data-driven marketing. Thank you, everyone who attended live. Really, really appreciate your time, and have a great rest of your week and weekend, everyone. Thank you very much.